Good afternoon. Thanks everyone for joining us for our first battle rhythm of the 2025 year, Building Evidence for Effective Veteran Suicide Prevention Programs, Practices, and Policy. I'm so excited that you're able to join us today. We are happy that we have today our presenters and our subject matter experts. Please welcome Tanha Patel, Senior Technical Advisor, Non-Infectious Disease Program from the CDC Foundation, and Ivy Vitanos, Technical Advisor for Evaluation, Non-Infectious Disease Program from the CDC Foundation as well. I am going to go ahead and pass our presentation over to them to get us started.
Thank you, Allison. Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting us to present at the Battle Rhythm. We're really honored to be here to lead the Battle Rhythm around building evidence for effective veteran suicide prevention programs, practices, and policies. Ivy is going to go ahead and get us started. My name is Tanha Patel. I'm a Senior Technical Advisor with the CDC Foundation. I'm joined here with a few of my colleagues, including Ivy Vitanzos and Haley Case. I'll be leading the presentation today, and other team members will be helping me with running our interactive activities and monitoring the chat. So during this battle rhythm, we plan to share some general information around suicide to get us started, but then really want to engage everyone on the call to learn more about effective ways to prevent or reduce suicide. We hope to then share some insights into how we can be more purposeful in designing and implementing suicide prevention efforts, especially with the end goal in mind of reducing suicide among our veterans. We will end with a quick introduction to evaluation and share some resources that are free for you and available to help you start either evaluating your programs or starting to plan a suicide prevention program that may be of interest to you. Throughout the presentation, one of the team members will be monitoring chat, so feel free to keep an eye on the chat and ask questions as they come up. I'm also going to try and save some time at the end to open it up for questions as a group. So if something comes up, add it to chat. If not, then we'll wait till the end as well. So let's get started. We know that suicide is one of the leading causes of death in the US. In 2020, suicide was the 13th leading cause of death among veterans. Another way to understand the gravity of suicide among veterans is knowing that veterans accounted for 14% of suicides among adults in the US in 2020. Deaths by suicide continue to increase in the past few years. In 2021, over 46,000 Americans died by suicide, with over 6,300 being among veteran adults. That's about an average of 18 veteran adults experiencing suicide death per day. That's a lot. In general population, non-veteran adults, men above ages of 85 and women ages 55 and 64 experience the highest number of suicide deaths. Among veteran populations, though, younger veterans are experiencing higher numbers of suicide deaths. Among veterans under the age of 45, suicide is the second leading cause of death. Suicide deaths were highest among men ages 18 to 54 and women ages 18 to 34. Suicide is preventable, and any loss due to suicide is one too many. Our veteran population is experiencing much higher rates of suicide, and we must do something better in supporting them. Within the veteran population, certain groups are highly impacted by suicide than others. These groups include veterans who are transitioning from active duty status to civilian status, veterans who may be experiencing housing instability or homelessness, American Indian and Alaska Native veterans, veterans with multiple health conditions, or veterans who are involved in the justice system, either by being in prison or being paroled or on probation. A growing group of veterans, women veterans, are also more highly impacted. There is no single cause for suicide. Science is showing that suicide is a complex interaction of multiple factors. We know that the risk factors are often not independent of each other, and suicide is typically the end result of gradual buildup of several factors that are playing a role. You probably have some ideas on what are some risk factors for suicide. So really, to kick us off in the battle rhythm, we wanted to have more interactions, and one of the ways we're going to do that is by using Mentimeter. So if you have your phones handy, please join us in this activity. You can use the QR code on the screen. It will take you to Mentimeter. If you're using a web browser, you can type in menti.com and the code on the screen. Haley's also going to include this information in the chat for you all. So I'll pause for a minute and let you guys join. And once you have joined in, you can start sharing some of your thoughts on what are some risk factors for suicide. You can enter multiple responses, but be sure to enter one response, hit enter, and then add your additional responses. I'm also going to ask you that you keep the Mentimeter link open once you're done, because we're going to use the same link throughout the presentation. I see some responses coming in. Give it a few minutes. Yeah, social relationships, family stress, homelessness, loss of connections, isolation, lack of resources, family issues, loneliness, PTSD, substance use disorder, underemployment or unemployment that leads to financial instability. These are all great risk factors. I see a few more coming in, so I'm just going to let you all add more. No longer having a purpose is a really big one. Isolation, loneliness again, disconnectedness, living a life you feel the need to escape from. Reintegration to civilian life, yes, that was the group that I called out, folks that are transitioning back into civilian life. Lack of agency. Okay. All right, so I think I see responses slowing down slightly. So maybe in 30 seconds, Ivy, you can close the question. So what Ivy's going to do is we have about 54 responses as of now. She's going to create a group response, create categories using automated features. So some of the responses may not be 100% accurate, just so you know, it's technology at play here. But common themes that I'm seeing are really homelessness, lack of purpose, having lack of connection, isolation, mental health related issues, PTSDs, substance use related things that are going on. Financial stress is a huge one, and then trauma, definitely. What is not here was the piece around transitioning and reintegrating into civilian life and connections that were missing or lack of connections that were bubbling up in the responses. So thank you so much for participating. And like I said, we'll continue this. So keep your links open on the background. But Ivy's going to bring us back to the slides. And your responses were spot on. Risk factors can be found at individual level, like having a history of mental illness or financial problems. They can be focused on relationships like isolation, feeling isolated, or being bullied by others. They can be community level risk factors, like experiencing trauma or discrimination may also play a role. Similarly, stigma associated with mental illness, easy access to lethal means, or lack of access to health care, which are more societal or systems level issues, are also risk factors for suicide. An individual may and often are experiencing multiple of these risk factors simultaneously. And understanding these risk factors is very important to then identify ways to reduce or address the risk factors in general. Science is showing us that veterans have an elevated risk of suicide. Risk factors related to events before joining the military or serving in combat zone, like experiencing childhood bullying, experiencing unstable housing, having parental divorce that you've experienced growing up, or having abuse or neglect that has been part of your childhood experience, having an incarcerated household member. These are things that are found higher among veterans. On top of that, there are additional factors that play into role for those who have experienced military life, right? So they have been exposed to combat, they have or may have traumatic brain injuries, they may have experienced military sexual trauma, and transition back to civilian life can lead to additional stressors on their own. So these are all important cultural contexts that we must take into account when we're working with and supporting veterans. So on the flip side, what I want to do next is kind of point us towards something positive and talk about what are some protective factors of suicide. What do you think are things that we need to strengthen or things that are actually helping veterans? So using the same QR code and the Mentimeter, you can go back to it. You may see something like move forward or skip ahead. But the same question, what are some protective factors? So enter a response, and then you can enter multiple responses as you go along. And yes, we will share slides with you all at the end. So great responses coming in: food security, having friends and family, having been engaged in your community, having strong connections, strong sense of purpose, having shelter, housing is a main thing, religious, faith, employment, having a good job, not just employed, but having a good job, right, that you enjoy. Access to healthcare, health services. I like this one. The entire family needs to be healed and look at the entire unit as a whole. Access to mental, behavior, and healthcare. Mental health services, yes. Being involved with church or any community institution that you may find yourself in. Having a plan for after transitioning from the military is also a big protective factor for those transitioning. Give it a minute. Stigma is a big one, right? We said stigma was a risk factor. Holistic roadmap for success. Consistent access to essential needs, not just access, but having it consistently available to you. These are great. Maybe in 30 seconds, if you guys have anything else, feel free to add in, and then we'll close it out. Group therapy. Yeah, so as we categorize all of your responses, we see common themes. Social connections are really important for us. Access to healthcare, not just physical healthcare, but also mental health, exercise, having a group and being able to exercise, financial stability. I think job security and having a good job was part of that as well. Sense of purpose is something that bubbled up several times. And community support was something that was really important. including your religious, faith-based institutions, but also other ways to get your community support. So these are all very spot-on responses for protective factors, and everything that you shared really resonates with what we want to talk about with you today. So thank you so much again for participating. You can keep the link open. We'll come back to this in a few minutes, but I'm going to go back to the slides real quick and just talk a little bit about what science is telling us and what we know for now. So as you share, there are several protective factors that we can support. Similar to risk factors, these protective factors can be at individual level. For example, building effective coping and problem-solving skills. Or relationship level protective factors are things where you talked about getting connections or getting support from your partners, family members, and friends. At community level, you can get more connections in your community through schools, your religious institutions, your workplace, or other places where you find support. And systems or policy changes like reduce access to lethal means, having access to care and safe environments are also very important. It's really essential to note that while each of these factors are important to address, finding ways to address several of the risks and protective factors simultaneously is going to be really efficient and important for us to tackle. So suicide is preventable. It's best addressed through a public health and comprehensive approach. The CDC released a Suicide Prevention Resource for Action, or Prevention Resource, in 2022. This resource highlights 7 strategies that have the best available evidence showing that they are promising to preventing suicide. We're going to provide a high-level overview of these strategies today, but I really encourage you to kind of take a look at the detailed report. It's about 100 pages, so take your time, digest it, but it has really good data and information on different programs and different information that we have available around preventing suicide. The 7 strategies with the best available evidence to prevent suicide are included on this screen. I'm going to take time to digest all of the 7 strategies together with you, so I don't want to talk about it right now. But I do want to point out that in this presentation, we'll talk about all of the 7 strategies, and I'll share some examples of how we can work towards supporting these strategies. And that's based on the data that's available in the prevention resource from 2022. There is data that shows that economic and financial stress may increase an individual's risk for suicide, or it may intensify physical or mental illness. There is evidence available that shows that improving housing stability and financial security can help strengthen economic support for individuals at risk of suicide. Programs like job skills training can help individuals get jobs. Policies like SNAP or minimum wages can also help support household finances. For stabilizing housing, programs that provide affordable housing or rental assistance are promising. The VA has a few programs to support homeless veterans. They have a program called Healthcare for Homeless Veterans and Safe Haven programs. These are showing some promising results. Creating environments that address risks and protective factors where individuals live, work, and play can also prevent suicide. Modifying characteristics of the physical environments, such as reducing access to lethal means, can prevent harmful behavior. For example, installing barriers on the bridges or balconies, or storing firearms in a gun safe or lockbox, especially if it's unloaded and separate from the ammunition, can help increase time and space between an individual's decision and actual suicidal attempt. At organizational or societal level, creating healthy organizational policies and culture can help promote positive behaviors and norms. A good example of this is the work being done by the U.S. Air Force Suicide Prevention Program. Through the Air Force program, they're trying to change the culture around how they're addressing suicide within the U.S. Air Force. Another example is putting in place policies such as reducing presence of alcohol outlets and increasing taxes on alcohol to reduce substance use. These types of policies reduce access and increase barriers to actual suicidal attempt. Speaking of access, it's really important to talk about improving access and delivery of suicide care as important strategy. You guys pointed this out in your responses earlier, but having access to not only physical health, but also mental health is really important. There's information that's showing that covering mental health conditions in health insurance policies can improve access and delivery of suicide care. Increasing provider availability, especially in underserved areas, and making rapid and remote access available through tele-mental health models are also showing promise. We're also seeing data that support systems change within our healthcare systems by implementing programs like the Zero Suicide Framework is also helping. One of the key protective factors that we talked about and you clearly highlighted in your responses is around having healthy connections. Engaging peers and community members in person or through virtual spaces, through mobile apps or other virtual environments are helping to build support and connections. As mentioned earlier, finding ways to engage with others through schools, workplaces, religious institutions, or other community groups are a protective factor for suicide, especially among military and veteran families, since that community is already so interconnected and strongly connected within each other. At an individual level, coping and problem-solving skills are very important. There is evidence supporting social emotional learning programs, such as programs where you learn how to recognize signs and symptoms of suicide in yourselves and others can help identify and refer those at risk to resources that they need. Learning ways to communicate better, becoming more aware of our emotions, and building resiliency can also help reduce suicide. As a society, one of the most important ways for us to prevent suicide is to be able to identify and support people at risk for suicide, and we need to do this in more culturally sensitive ways. Gatekeeper trainings where community learns to recognize warning signs of suicide crisis and how to refer those at risk to helpful resources are showing promise. Crisis response interventions, such as providing real-time support and referrals through the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline or mobile apps like virtual hope bots, can help connect people at crisis get help that they need in real time. Programs that are proactively planning for safety and follow-up after a suicide attempt, things like sending out postcards or text messages or giving a phone call to individuals who have had a suicidal attempt, are helpful. There are programs like the SPI that is used by the VA can be protective against suicidal ideation, attempts, and suicide as well. Finally, the therapeutic approaches are always a good way to support those at risk of suicide. Science is also showing that risk of suicide can increase among people who have lost a friend, a peer, family member, coworker, or other close members to suicide. Postvention, safe reporting, and messaging about suicide can help lessen harms and prevent future risk of suicide. Knowing that veteran and military family is strong and interconnected, it's really important for us to pay attention to lessening harms and preventing future risk, because the community is so interconnected that this is also a risk factor for them. So I just gave you a lot of information. You probably have lots of questions coming my way, and you probably also have some ideas or thoughts around how what you've seen other people do or what you are doing yourselves connects to these strategies. So let's take a few minutes to type in your questions in chat if you have them. And in the meantime, we're also going to set up for another activity, which is a little bit longer. So if you have questions, feel free to send those along, and I'll pause for 1 or 2 minutes to answer those now, and then we'll move on to the next activity. So I have another screen drawing here, so I'm going to pull the chat up and see if there are any questions. And I'm going to invite our CDC subject matter experts who are on the call, who are more familiar with the prevention resource, to also hop in and answer questions if they have some information. So I see one question from Hugo around gun safety having a positive impact on veteran suicide. I don't know if Amy or Fanis from CDC, if you guys want to take this one, or we can find the reference in the prevention resource and send that to you, Hugo, as well. Any other thoughts, questions? Okay, well, if that's the case, we'll go ahead and jump to the next activity, which is a little bit more creative than the last 2 activities. In this activity, we're asking you to walk through a few examples of strategies. We have 2, if we have time, maybe 3 activities that we'll do as a group to plan together and have you kind of share ideas on how can we operationalize programs, practices, policies to address these strategies. I see leveraging veteran experiences to connect with the community. Yeah, peer mentor buddy program is really something I've seen a lot of. Support groups are really helpful as well. Fundraising activities, allowing space for veterans to connect with other veterans, building stronger relationships with family, healthy communication, programs that bring veterans together around camping trips, volunteering opportunities, goal setting sessions, I like that one, healing waters patrol base, the governors and mayors challenges. Yes, there's so many of them going around and so many fun programs that are being funded through those. Getting veterans to communicate as a group with other veterans, religious support groups, civilian cultural competency, programs that focus on supporting folks to build social capital in their communities. I think that's really great. The marriage retreats are really important as well. So not only talking about healthy connections as a community, but also healthy connections within your partners and your family members, including your kids if you have them, right? Those are all connections that are really important to have. Canine companions. I'm not a dog person, but I really do like those programs because I see such a big value in them. I just get scared of dogs myself. I've had some experiences in the past. Team Rubicon. I feel like I've heard of that one before. Veterans Mental Health First Aid Training. Interactive podcast. Yeah, these are all great. Maybe 30 more seconds and see if there are any fun categories that are bubbling up. Maybe Ivy can try and see what bubbles up there. And if you guys have specific programs and want to share your particular websites or links to your programs, feel free to include that in the chat. And I'm sure Allison will be able to pull those together in the after action report for everyone. So this is, again, not a perfect summary of all of the responses that you shared with us, but AI at its best is telling us that there were about 7 groups that were formed, programs around veteran community, support groups, volunteering opportunities bubbled up quite a bit, family focus retreats, mentorship programs, adaptive sports, sports-related activities, and a few more responses that were coming through as we broke things up. So thank you again for sharing these responses with us. Yes, coffee meetups and Mission Continues are great examples as well. We have a few more strategies that we wanted to walk through, so maybe we can go to the next one. Okay, so this particular strategy is focused on teaching coping and problem-solving skills. So feel free to enter your ideas, your programs that you may be implementing, or things you might have seen others implement. And I see some responses coming in the chat. I'm looking this way because the other screen is where the chat responses are coming in. So we have Eagle Rock Camp, Robot Recovery, Purple Heart Homes, Hire Heroes. Some of these are probably for the earlier strategy. Lady Veterans Connect, Transitional Home is a good one. So for coping and problem-solving skills, we have some responses coming in. We have music therapy, life coaches, one-on-one therapy or support group, CBT or DBT therapy sessions, counseling, communication skills and trainings. We have peer support groups again, small group sharing examples of how they currently cope, life coaches, Boulder Crest Path, mission-based trauma recovery through Warrior Canine Connections, life skills education classes for veteran employee resource groups and student veterans, peer support specialist. We have stool programs for veteran families. These are all great examples. I think I had seen marriage retreats in the earlier one. I would tend to say that may also fit here as well, because you're still learning about communication and emotional awareness, those type of coping, problem-solving skills at an individual level too. So sometimes the ideas and the programs that you may be implementing may fit multiple strategies, and that's totally fine. Like I said earlier, sometimes it's better for us to address multiple factors as opposed to focusing on one factor at a time. So I think we can start closing this one out. I want to do one more with the group and then continue on with the presentation. So for teaching coping and problem-solving skills, we have 5 different groups focused on trauma recovery, therapy sessions, programs focused on veterans, whether it's student veterans or support groups, therapy and communication skills are the top right now. Thank you so much again, and we'll just do a quick third one. This one is a little bit different, and this one is more focused on identifying and supporting people at risk. So this is more community level. This is more things you can do in workplaces, in religious institutions. I'm going to do a cheat sheet and say the Gatekeeper trainings is a good example of this one as well. Mental health first aid, training to identify suicide risk, yes. Community awareness, the CSSRS. I don't know if I'm familiar with that one. Firewatch, yes. CRP training, referral resources, programs for gatekeepers, assist trainings, yeah, stigma reducing campaigns, yeah, that's a good one. Maybe can you scroll down a little bit? ETS sponsorship training, training for law enforcement, yeah. These are all great ideas and suggestions we have. Hey, maybe give it 30 more seconds and we'll wrap this one up as well. Ask the difficult questions if you're face to face. Do you have a plan? I like that one. The crisis line, yes, a good referral for any one of us to know about. Okay, I think we can close it out, Ivy, and yeah, so the Firewatch program came up a couple of times, crisis lines and referrals, assist program bubbled up a few times here as well, mental health training, mental health first aid in particular, and then community campaigns, which I hadn't actually thought about, but that's a great addition that you guys had brought on for us. I know there's some activity in the chat as well, so feel free to continue using chat if you have other programs or ideas that you want to share with the group. But I think we can continue on with our presentation. And going back to the slides, thank you again so much. The activity was really fun and I learned a few new things, so I'm always excited about that one. I hope you are also learning about each other's programs that are out there. I really want to emphasize that this activity and the diversity of the responses and programs you guys shared shows that we need to do more and a better job at collecting and reporting on all of the work that's going on out there, the lessons learned that we are having, the accomplishments that are happening in the field, and really building the data and evidence for all of the amazing work that's already happening to support veterans. And some of the programs that you guys shared and some of the programs that I shared seem very logical, and we can see how it might be helpful in reducing suicide factors or strengthening the protective factors. For example, if we put up a barricade on bridges and balconies, it's a physical barrier, right, which creates time and space that someone will have to get through before they actually complete the action they have in mind. But some of the other examples that we shared are not so straightforward. For example, people may be wondering, how exactly does healthy connections lead to reduced suicide? Let's talk that through together. Let me show you what we call a theory of change. So we said that we can promote healthy connections through healthy peer norms. There is a program called Women Connect that is showing promise in promoting healthy peer norms. Women Connect is a group-based training program for non-clinical U.S. Air Force service members. The program trains small units of service members to strengthen cohesion, share purpose, and collective group skills to manage career and personal challenges. As participants go through this group training, they're engaging in peer norm activities by building and communicating shared purpose, increasing social connections, and sharing coping skills. Doing this can help participants start being okay with looking and asking for help. You see more increased help-seeking behavior among participants as a result. Then, as they continue this behavior, participants may also start feeling like they belong together. They have a stronger social connection with the peers and the larger community. This can help reduce depression and suicidal ideation, which over time will help reduce suicide attempts and eventually suicide deaths. So in this example, you can see how the program Win-Win Connect, which is focused on building healthy connections and promoting healthy peer norms, can help reduce suicide attempts and deaths. And there is logical thinking behind it. There is a flow of information that feeds from one bot to the next. So each program should really have a theory of change or logical thinking behind it. It's really important to test out that theory at each stage. For each bots that I shared in the previous slide, we're building assumptions. We're building assumptions to say that if we do X, we're going to lead to the next thing, which is Y. But we don't really know if that's true or if it's even reasonable. So we need to test that through evaluation. Evaluation is an iterative process used to understand more about our programs, its needs, what's working in a program, where are the gaps that exist, and what else needs to be done to be successful. This process allows us to test our assumptions that we have built into the program and our theory of change. More and more organizational leaders and funders, someone called out the Governor and Mayor's Challenge, funders like those are asking us to evaluate our programs and share data and information on what's actually happening with the programs that we're implementing, whether it's suicide prevention programs or other programs. Conducting evaluations and gathering information on our programs will help us be accountable to them, and it'll also help us share achievements and impact that we're having in our community among the participants that we're supporting. Because we can test our theories and adapt the program in a real, timely manner, we can learn and move towards the end goal to help our communities much more efficiently. So we can move towards the end goal and help them meet the goals that they need. If you're interested in learning more about evaluation or are ready to start thinking about building your own theories of change for your own suicide prevention programs, we have exciting resources for you to share. One main resource that we would like to share with you today is the Veteran Suicide Prevention Evaluation Toolkit. It's a mouthful. We call it VESP Toolkit. This toolkit was developed in partnership with the CDC subject matter experts and is available online on our website. You can use the QR code on this slide to go directly to the landing page for the VESP Toolkit. The toolkit is designed specifically for veteran serving organizations who are planning for or are already have a veteran or suicide prevention program in place to support veterans in their communities. The toolkit includes two main components, the toolkit itself and a workbook. The VESP Toolkit includes educational content and a glossary to get you started with learning more about evaluation and evaluation concepts. The VESP Workbook includes worksheets and complete examples of real evaluation projects that are completed by veteran serving organizations like yourselves. If you're interested in building out your own theory of change, we recommend you start with reading Chapter 3 of the VESP Toolkit and then completing the worksheet 2 in the workbook. In addition to the VESP Toolkit, we also want to share some general resources that we have found helpful in understanding data related to suicide prevention. The first resource is the Suicide Prevention Resource Center. The General Center has a lot of general resources around suicide prevention, but they also have a set of courses. And we highly recommend taking time to complete some of these courses, which are free and probably last hour to 3 hours. But they're really important in kind of laying the groundwork for understanding the definitions around suicide ideation versus what is suicide attempt. And it also has courses around data sources that may be useful for you to kind of dig in and get access to. There's also a new resource from RAND called Getting to Outcomes Planning and Evaluation Approach. This is a great resource for those who are ready to start thinking about implementing a suicide prevention program, but you aren't sure which program to take or which program to really highlight in your organization. All of these resources are great starting points for learning more about suicide prevention programs that are promising and understanding the data behind what's working, why something is working, and how something is working. Many of you are already implementing programs, practices, and policies to support veterans in your communities. So I'm hoping that today's presentation and the battle rhythm has something that you can take away with. We're hoping that you are also sharing some of these resources with your peers and really taking something out of this battle rhythm as we start the new year. With that, I am going to stop talking and take some questions and open up time for us to just have a conversation. Thank you all. So I'm going to bring my other chat box over and see what questions may come up. And Allison, I think at this point, if folks want to unmute themselves, they can maybe raise their hand if they want to come off mute and ask a question, and we can take the questions live as well.
Okay, that sounds great. I had a question. I was trying to figure out how to frame it. Did you say that because it sounded like when you said that the veterans had a higher rate of suicide because of the connections they have to each other or the social? No.
No, I don't think there's connection data-wise. I think it's the military community is connected. So when they do transition back to civilian life, that connection may drop, or they need to find other connections in their new communities, which may be a little bit harder. So the piece around connection is really important for this particular population. And it's one of the protective factors. If they are connected and feel connected, that's going to help build their just personal coping skills and reduce the risk of suicide.
Yeah, I see. So it was like the lack or the loss of that connection.
It's a risk, yeah.
Feel when they live. I got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was like, what? Yeah.
And because sometimes if you have a loss within your family or community, you may start feeling at risk yourself. And that's also something that plays out in the military community, right? Because everyone is so interconnected. Your brothers and sisters are part of your unit, your family. So if you experience loss within them, then you yourself may be starting to have some mental instability that may play out. So it's another risk that average population may not feel as much as the military family does. A great question, though. Other thoughts, questions? And if you don't want to come off mute or raise your hand, you can also send us an email with your questions at westbeevaluation@cdcfoundation.org. Haley's put that in the chat for you guys as well. So we have about 10 minutes, so please feel free to unmute yourself, come off camera, whatever you guys need to do. If you want to share some of the exciting programs that you guys talked about earlier, that would be great too.
Stacy has her hand raised.
Hey, Stacy.
Yes. Hi, Tanya. I apologize. I have to multitask, so I can't come off camera, but I wanted you to know that this was absolutely fantastic. A little bit of background. I'm a former school teacher of students that are currently serving in the military, and I've spent the past 4 years learning with this community to be a military transition coach, educator, and you tied a bow on everything that I've learned and all of my trainings for the past 4 years. So I just wanted to say, fantastic. So that's my first comment. My second one is a little bit of a different question. So recently I joined our family's like branded merchandise company, and I've put together a collection of mental health resources that have pamphlets on PTSD, that have pamphlets on, drug abuse and reintegration, that different veteran service organizations can have created with their logos so that they can give it out at their community outreach programs or things like that. Now, that is for profit. So how could an organization go about getting funding to potentially maybe grants or something like that? Like I'm learning. So now I'm entering this space wearing a different hat now. And I just don't know the best way to go about helping people get these tools that really can be very, instrumental in preventative approaches. So I'm just looking for a little bit of guidance.
Yeah, no, that's a really important question. And to your first point, thank you so much. It's definitely a team effort between the CDC Foundation team and the CDC subject matter experts that I work with. So it's really kudos to the entire team. And we do have some CDC subject matter experts on the call, so I'll invite them to come on camera if they want. So if the questions come up, you know who they are, and they may be able to help us as well. But in terms of applying for funding opportunities, I also know a couple of colleagues from previous years that have come through the Veteran Suicide Prevention Program at the CDC Foundation are on the call. And because it's a battle rhythm, I think it's okay for others to chime in and answer those questions as well. So I don't know if any of the other WSOs have any thoughts or ideas to help Stacy out.
And I'm happy to get on a call with anybody. It's going to be later in the spring. I actually have to go through surgery in a few weeks, but I'm happy to, put together any literature for anybody with their own logos, just to help, in my way. So just so everybody knows that too.
Yeah, no, I think one of the things that immediately comes to my mind, I am not a grant writer or a grant development person, but what I've seen other people do is really sign up for listservs. So someone mentioned Governor's Challenge or Mayor's Challenges. There are other funding opportunities out there, so find those around suicide prevention or mental health services, and just get on the listservs. Whenever there is a funding opportunity, they will send you an email saying, hey, we have this upcoming funding opportunity. And if you have board members for your private organization, they may also be a good resource because they may be connected to other organizations that may help either fundraise or identify grants that you can apply for.
That's a good idea, the mayor's challenges and the governor's challenges, to even just once I create honestly, I had the idea this morning and I started creating a website for that, but that's a good idea. Once I get my materials a little bit more solidified and streamlined, I can start reaching out to directly the mayor's offices, and I'm good at that. Teacher has to lead the way, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I know, Allison, I'm going to call on your organization, and the mission continues. Like, there are other national VSOs on the call as well. They've been in this space for a lot longer than I have, and they may have other thoughts and ideas that they may want to share too.
Thanks.
Sure. Good question.
I have another question for the CDC Foundation. You guys did on that line, y'all have worked with a lot of different veteran service organizations. And do you have a list somewhere on your website of ones that you guys have worked with that are recommended?
Yes, I do believe we have a list of prior participants on our website, and I'm going to try and pull it out. And Emily Sexton is also on the call. She's probably much faster than I am. Yes.
Yeah, I can put it in the chat for everyone. I wouldn't say that they're recommended, as in like we promote their organization or their program specifically. These are all organizations that we worked through the VESP project. So they completed a competitive grant application to participate. And primarily our work with them has been in evaluating, so either doing a formative or process evaluation of one of their suicide prevention programs. So our experience primarily with their organization is with one of their suicide prevention programs from the evaluation side of it. And there are certainly vast VSOs and nonprofit organizations working in the veteran and military space that we haven't been able to work with just because this program has been very, very small but mighty. So there's probably a lot more good organizations out there doing great work, and it just takes some of that personal connection and partnership building to kind of vet them for your own organization or if you're looking for specific types of work. Yeah. And Tanha was quicker. She already put it in the chat while I was talking.
While you were talking, I will add on that for those who are not familiar with the Veteran Suicide Prevention Program, it was an evaluation demonstration project to help veteran organizations build their evaluation capacity. And some of the participants actually helped us create the toolkit that we shared earlier. So the information that's in the toolkit you may find more relevant and applicable to you all. So definitely encourage you to take a look at that. Even if you're not ready to evaluate or are still like, what is evaluation? Why do I have to do it? I think it's still a good resource just to skim through, and maybe you'll see yourself in there because of the two examples are based on two real programs that are implemented by veteran serving organizations. Other thoughts, questions? I know it's still the first day back in the new year, so people are still probably catching up.
Well, I hope everybody gets an opportunity to go on and look at the toolkit. I have one and have looked at it. It's a really amazing resource that could really help any program get to being able to effectively evaluate how their approaches are going and what their prevention strategies are. And that's the whole purpose, honestly. That's like, as somebody said, to make sure that we are using best practice and we are actually showing that we are getting to that place to actually reduce veterans' death by suicide or suicide. I think Dee has a question as well.
I do. I'm new to the AWP family, but I was watching the beginning where they were talking about proactive suggestions. And one of those was better law enforcement training. I have 27 years in law enforcement and I come from a large California agency. So in 2016, we did a case study at the labor board or this labor statistics that say 20 to 25% of veterans become firefighters or police officers. So that transition, I know we have suicide prevention training as law enforcement, but I'm wondering if there's a program or some ideas perhaps on the transition from military to paramilitary careers. Although it shows purpose, it still has a lot of the PTSD, it still has a lot of the triggers that the military has. So I don't know if there's a lot of transitioning programs for veterans that go into those same type of careers, even though they're more civilian based. It's a really hand in glove kind of connection. So my question was actually, sorry, are there transition programs like that or that you know of, or has that been studied at all?
I'm not that familiar with it. I'm going to have to invite the rest of the CDC Foundation team members to see if they know of something.
Because I know 2016, if we're looking at 15 to 25% going into the first responder field, that's got to be more now than it has been in the past. That's a lot of misconnections, that I'm thinking that, coming out of a combat zone and they're not, like my cousin, for example, did 10 deployments in Afghanistan. Definitely, he's 100% disabled. He also has a firearms permit. I mean, the firearms licensing, they don't look at that PTSD diagnosis, which is a a big severity as far as I'm concerned. But there's certain loopholes that I think that we're always going to be missing, in that transition from military to paramilitary careers. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in really quickly. I don't know of any programs that talk about the transition between going from being veteran to first responder, but we do know that first responders are a population of people that tend to be disproportionately impacted by suicide. So I think there is like a pretty strong connection there, and it's worth studying more for sure.
Thank you.
So I think we are. Is there any more questions?
I think Stacy has her hand up. I'm not sure if it's new or.
Yeah, it's new. Can I share a resource with Dee for a sec? Dee, I put it in the chat. There's somebody by the name of Corey Weathers, and she's a military spouse, and she's a licensed mental health professional, and she has a great podcast and resources for the first responder community, in addition to, the veteran and military community. So if nothing else, that might be a place to start.
Oh, great resource. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. And there's also, I believe it's Upstate Warrior Solution. I believe they're out of North Carolina. And I know that they actually talk about that they serve the first responder community as well. So again, it's just, sometimes it's helpful to see what other people are doing for ideas or.
Oh, absolutely. And I really think the cross-reference is important, especially as we get into more terrorist activity on our homeland. And we're going to see a lot more cross-reference between our military and our law enforcement personnel coexist.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
Upstate Warrior Solutions is in Greenville, South Carolina.
There you go.
They do an amazing job.
Thank you.
Yeah, they do an amazing job with their police in general. The connection with their law enforcement. They have a really good working relationship, and encourage all you people out there and with different organizations. If you do a lot of community outreach, your police department and your fire department are very good organizations to help you with outreach in general for veterans. So
Absolutely.
Because of that amazing amount of people who come out of the military, they want to continue their purpose. So is it okay? I'm going to go ahead. I don't see, we've got a lot of really good comments that are coming in the chat, and some good information from different people. So I will make sure that all gets into the after action, but I'm going to go ahead, and I think we're kind of calming down on questions. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to thank our CDC presenters today. It was an excellent presentation, and I totally enjoyed every bit of that conversation that we had going on today. I am going to share my slide and close this out. I just want to thank Tanha and Ivy, all you people, everybody here who was actively engaged. I really so appreciate you working with us through the app today. We had a lot of good participation, so that makes me smile and makes me happy. At America's Warrior Partnership, we partner with communities to improve veterans' quality of life and thereby reduce veterans' death by suicide or self-harm. We believe that communities are the best place to improve veterans' quality of life. And our goal at America's Warrior Partnership, and our goal today, is to provide community partners like yourself with support, information, and best practices to help you deliver quality services to your veterans in your community. The next Battle Rhythm is going to be February 3rd, and it's focused on the incoming administration and Congress, implication for veterans' future. We hope you all can attend, and I hope to see you. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.